Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I'm just sitting here drinking my morning coffee, getting ready to get my day started, eat some breakfast, squat, all that. And I thought I would talk with you guys today about lessons I've learned from squatting every day. Now, you guys know I did this same sort of training a few years ago. I've also even previously done deadlifting every day years and years ago, even before I ever got on YouTube, back when I was younger, stronger, all of that. But there's some valuable lessons to be learned about this style of training and things that a lot of you, if you decide to undertake this, and I want to make this clear, squatting every day is absolutely not for everyone. And when I say that, I don't mean that maybe you're not a real man, you're not tough or any of that because you can't undertake it. It's that some people's lifestyles, their careers, things like that are going to interfere with it. Meaning if you want to go out and party, this is not for you. If you have a 60-hour-a-week job and 2 kids or a very physically demanding job, this sort of training may not be for you. You would need to run a scaled down version of it where you only do this like 4 days a week, maybe 5. But you're not going to squat 6 or 7 days a week for the majority of people in those other sort of lifestyles. It's just not going to work. You're not going to be able to recover and handle it. But the thing is, there's a lot of things that are take homes from it. Is it because I know a lot of other people who've used this style of training. I even chat with some behind the scenes, some other coaches and people. I've used it before myself. And some of the things that need to be noted are the psychological aspects of it first. Because one of the things that you're going to note is that how you feel is a lie. As John Bros said, who is a coach who pushes this style of training, how you feel is a lie. You're going to have mental barriers oftentimes where you feel like you can't squat today. Sometimes you get these physical feelings to where you're like, I feel weak, I feel tired. The bar feels heavy on my ramp ups. Bar feels heavy on my ramp ups. But then you get to your minimum, your daily minimum, and it's not as bad. Like there are literally times to where you're ramping up and there's 150 pounds difference between your last ramp up and your daily minimum, and they feel about the same. In other words, it doesn't feel 150 pounds heavier. Like for me, like there are days when I do like my 375, then I would go to my 455. Now I'm up to 460 for daily minimums. Where the 375, I felt like I only put 10 more pounds on the bar when I went to the 455. And when you start filming yourself, you start finding it's not as bad as you think. You're going to have days where you come in and you just smoke it. Like there are days when I didn't get enough sleep the night before and I felt terrible. And I came in, but my body didn't notice it. The weight wasn't that heavy, and I smoked concentric reps with my training max that was like 1.5, 1.6 seconds. It's happened. I've done it on camera. There are other days to where you feel just fine. No problem. You're ready to go. You feel strong psychologically. You're strong physically. No soreness, no tightness. You get under there and you struggle. The weight feels heavy. But then you look at it on camera and it still is very fast. You're not struggling. There's no grinding. So it's interesting when you compare how you feel versus what's really going on. And it's what he said, how you feel is a lie, and there's truth to that. And then the other aspect of the psychological is the daily grind from it. Because at a certain point, you know, like for me, I enjoy lifting heavy. I don't like doing reps or any of that stuff. I just don't enjoy it. It's not fun. I want to see big numbers. I like lifting heavy. That's one reason I got into lifting itself. I enjoy lifting heavy weights. I like doing heavy deadlifts. But when you're squatting heavy every single day, there's that psychological toll that it takes. There are days when you wake up and the first thing you think when you get out of bed is your body feels stiff, your IT bands hurt a little bit, where you go, man, I do not want to squat today. In fact, I'm going to say that's going to be at least 50% of your days. It's going to be at least 50% of your days. You do not look forward to your squatting. You don't want to do it. In fact, I would say there are many days, I'd probably say for me 3 days a week, I wake up and my entire morning before I get ready, I'm dreading that heavy squat. Like there are days, I would say 1 day a week, 2 days a week, I'm looking forward to it. I'm like, man, I'm going to crush that. It's going to be great. It's going to be light. I'm ready to do this. But I would say more often than not, twice as many days every week, you will wake up and dread that weight. And it's going to feel like this burden looming over you. It's going to actually have a psychological impact there. And that's one of the big things that everyone who runs this knows. It requires you to develop a certain amount of psychological toughness. It does. When you may not have that toughness when you start doing this program, but getting under that bar every day, even the days when you dread it, there are days when you were almost scared of it. But you get under there and you do it anyways. And there's something to be said for that. It does help build a certain amount of psychological toughness. And there are days when you do it, when you've been doing it a little while, that you realize that if you can get under that heavy barbell that day, that morning, there's nothing else you can't do that day, that everything else starts to seem trivial in comparison. Whatever other stressors you have to deal with. And believe me, guys, I don't talk about it on here, but I've had multiple major life stressors since starting this program. I just don't discuss you guys because they're in my personal life. There's things that have happened, family things that have happened that put me under a tremendous amount of stress, stuff I didn't want to deal with, important phone calls I did not want to have to make. Again, vehicle wrecks, everything else that happened in the middle of me doing this. Yet, it feels like after you do that, because you dread that squat more than all the other stuff through the day, that once you get it out of the way, the other stuff seems minor. It's like, well, I could handle this. I mean, I got under whatever hundreds of pounds and squatted it again today. Other stuff seems minor. It eventually becomes this thing that it's like it's the hardest thing that you're going to do that day. And it's interesting how that works, because once you do it, it feels like everything else is easier. Like after you've done your heavy squat, it's like, oh, I don't care about the heavy bench. I don't care about a heavy chin up. All that stuff doesn't seem like nearly as big of a deal. Then there's the recovery end of it. One of the things that you're going to notice is that you're going to have to change the way you sleep, things like that. In other words, sleeping positions that you might have done in the past that you find comfortable, you're going to find you can't do them because they will cause things like connective tissue inflammation, joint inflammation. You'll actually wake up in pain if you sleep the wrong way. It will force you to sleep in ways and find ways to sleep that puts less stress on things like your hips, your knees, your IT bands, all of that stuff. And if you sleep correctly, you wake up completely pain-free. If you sleep wrong, you hurt. So it starts to impact things like that. It will absolutely impact it. But as far as some of the positive things go, you're going to get stronger. You're going to be surprisingly stronger every day than you think you're going to be. Like, it becomes shocking at a certain point because, like for me, I just keep increasing the weight slowly over time. It keeps going up, and you have weeks where you're like, man, this is so heavy. How in the hell? Like you get around to maybe Friday or whatever, and you're like, how in the hell am I going to increase this weight next week? I just don't see this. And then, 2 weeks later, you've increased it twice. You keep getting stronger as long as you're conservative with it, and you're conservative with those increases, and it's a gradual upward trend. You just get stronger. And the other thing is that you become more capable with things like the squat. Everyone worries about, oh man, I'm stiff, I have to warm up, I've got to do this dynamic stretching and everything. Actually, the same thing that happens with a lot of Olympic lifters who do their lifts every day. You just develop an amount of mobility that doesn't require you to warm up as much. It doesn't require you to do dynamic stretching because your body gets so used to doing it. We use the words in shape. And now you see in the fitness world, because of the bodybuilding influence, people mistake the term in shape for how lean you are. Reality is, being in shape is how conditioned you are to whatever activities you're going to do. And what you're going to find is that if you're squatting all the time, if you're squatting every single day, you eventually get to the point to where your mobility and everything just stays on point. You can just walk under and do a couple ramp up singles and squat. And it's kind of like you guys saw Chris Duffin did his challenge of 800 pounds every day for 30 days. He got to where in it he would do a warm up with 200, a warm up with 600. He would go 200 pounds. That's where he would start. 600 pounds. Then boom, hit his 800. You start to find that you just don't need that much of it. People say, oh, I'm worried about an injury. It doesn't seem to occur at a certain point because your mobility, your range of motion and everything just kind of stays there because it doesn't have time to detrain. I mean, if you're never taking 3 days off from squatting, and you're squatting pretty much every day, occasionally a day off, but you're squatting every day, all of your mobility and your strength at the terminal ends of the range of motion don't detrain. They just stay there all the time. They stay there all the time. The other thing tends to be energy turnover. Interestingly enough, most people who run this style of training get leaner. There's some exceptions, and I've noticed it with other guys. they've talked about it that you start reaching a threshold in it to where your energy turnover just seems to start going up, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. When we think about that traditionally, people are like, no, it's because you're not adding that much volume. You're doing the same volume. You're only squatting to a heavy single every day with a few ramp ups. That's not that many calories, right? That's how we tend to think. And people would be saying if you came in and did a set of 20 reps with half of your max twice a week, that would burn way more calories. And in theory, it should. But one of the things you notice is that your energy turnover starts going up. That if you're eating the same amount of food you were eating before, the scale starts going down. If you guys recall, Alec and Kiri, he's run this before, and he comments. I've shouted him out before, and he comments under my videos. He did that, and he noted that he felt he was a little pudgy, and he ended up having deep abs after running this program. He lost like 12 pounds, and he's a strength and conditioning coach. He lost 12 pounds in something like 3 months of doing it, and struggled to maintain his body weight. He ended up being the most ripped he had ever been in his life, and he was never a fat guy. He's never a fat guy like I've been. So he noticed that. And, it's one of the things that I'm noticing. I mean, for me now, the scale is starting to come down. I'm still eating a tremendous amount of food. Like, I don't go to bed hungry. And now, granted, I'm eating pretty clean. I'm eating a lot of bro foods. I'm eating a lot of whole foods, minimally processed, a lot of protein, fruits, vegetables, all of that. So that helps. But the same thing, I am noticing over time, my scale is starting to come back down because I'm just not able to keep pace with the energy turnover at my body weight, and with the training workload I'm doing, I guess my energy turnover is starting to surpass what I can consume. And so for some people, it's going to be a dramatic difference in your diet in order to make progress. And like I would tell people, there's no need to force feed. If you're gaining strength, it doesn't matter if the scale is going down, you're gaining muscle with it. And that's kind of the point we get to. People want to say, well, this system can't be efficient for gaining muscle. There's not enough volume, blah, blah, blah. But you seem to gain muscle on it. You seem to recomposition on it. Everyone who does it notices this. They all get bigger. They all get bigger. And it comes back to the point of we have all these studies looking at volume and everything, but we don't have many studies looking at what really happens to muscle mass when you train really heavy all the time. We don't have any real data on it, but we have anecdote in the real world. And what do we know? It increases your max squat really fast doing this, right? It will increase your max squat really fast. Yet all the data we have in studies we have show that total muscle mass, not neuromuscular efficiency, is the most dramatically far more important factor in muscle mass gain. Like in how much muscle you have on your body. That is the most important factor in how much you can squat, irrespective of your leverage as the individual, how you train. So we come back to the point of maybe there's something else going on here, that it does put muscle on you. And because you are gaining muscle, because you are squatting very heavy all the time, your squat is going up almost weekly, your muscle mass has to be going up. And that is probably the reason there seems to be a dramatic energy turnover effect. Because otherwise it doesn't make sense, but everyone reports it. It seems to be the case. But when we look at it from an energy perspective, it shouldn't be. But I guess if we factor in that there is absolutely significant hypertrophy happening every week in all the biggest muscles of the body, it would make sense. It would make sense because that requires fuel to facilitate that muscle growth. And I'll probably do more of these in the future. This is just kind of me establishing a little bit about just things I've noticed, my observations, what I've learned from doing this for the last couple of months. I'm almost at the 3-month mark again. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.